So Genshin Impact has been out for around 5 years now, and we had so many controversies that made the community boil. In this video, we'll be revisiting the timeline for the biggest Genshin Impact controversies each year, starting off from its release in 2020 up until now. So 2020 was the release year of Genshin Impact, and it only lived in 2020 for about 3 months, but it still surprisingly had quite a bit of controversy in that year. It started right around release when people started complaining about Genshin Impact's anti-cheat system, because Genshin released as just like a gacha game that's mainly single player, and even the multiplayer, it wasn't competitive or anything that required a substantial anti-cheat. But people discovered that even with that, Genshin Impact still used a very invasive anti-cheat that was first of all kernel level, and it still ran even when the game is closed. So a lot of people were outraged about that, and they were complaining. After a while, Hoyo issued an update to the anti-cheat, calming down players and saying that it was basically a programming bug and that the anti-cheat won't be on when the game is not on anymore. Unfortunately though, the anti-cheat remained kernel level, which is still kind of invasive, but at least it wasn't running most of the time when the game is not even open. There was also some controversy about some words banned in the co-op chats where you cannot use a certain words and they'll just automatically get censored. But the biggest controversy in 2020 by far was definitely the Zhongli controversy. Zhongli was a highly anticipated character who represented the Chinese culture a lot. And a lot of people and fans, especially Chinese fans, did hold Zhongli to a very high regard, and they were super excited for that character. But when Zhongli came out, most people found his strength quite underwhelming, and they thought that was not appropriate to represent a character like that with this level of in-game strength at all. There was a huge controversy about that. It's mainly on the Chinese side of fans, but a lot of people did find Zhongli underwhelming for sure. After a while though, Genshin issued a buff for Zhongli, which was the first and last buff in the game up until the recent Hexarray buffs. But they did buff him by quite a lot. They adjusted his passive talent, his multipliers, they made it easier for him to obtain a shield, his interruption during the shield was increased, and they also buffed Gio altogether to make sure everything was good, and he immediately turned into one of the most broken characters, especially at the time. So that was definitely the biggest controversy I remember from then. But moving on to 2021, which in my opinion had one of the biggest controversies in the game history, which was the first anniversary rewards. That was the first time that I felt how sort of stingy MiHoYo can be at the time, because during that time we never really had something that was very interesting in terms of like game rewards or free rewards in general. Also, that was around the time where Genshin was super big, and it definitely broke expectations of how big is it gonna become. So a lot of people back then felt entitled to some sort of give back from the company, since the game just became much bigger than their projections, and they felt that that was just with the help of the community, so the community should get something. And a lot of that was already brewing, since a lot of people were complaining that not enough content is being released in the game, not enough rewards were being given to the players. But it came out to the peak when the company released the list of the first anniversary awards. I don't remember exactly what were the awards, but I remember it was just some like polls. I think it was a temple or something like that with like 100k Mora, which was super underwhelming for a lot of people when they were comparing it to many other gacha games that had much better anniversary awards. But Genshin back then, it was just a temple, a couple of web events, some Mora, and that was pretty much it. And that made the community boil. Honestly, in my lifetime playing this game, I don't think I ever saw the community as gathered and angry at the company specifically, more than that, genuinely. And the proof of that is that they started review bombing the game on App Store and Play Store. A lot of people were just 1 star in the game, and I think the rating of the game just fell to like 1.5 or something like that. And it was just a war on the rating system. A lot of bad reviews, bad comments in the game, and then it became a meme at some point. I still remember I made a post about that, where I was just randomly looking at the reviews of some app. I think it was like Google Classroom or something random like that, and I still saw some bad reviews to a completely different app just complaining about the Genshin Anniversary Awards. And I was like, okay, well, this is getting out of hand. That's how angry the community was back then. But yeah, ultimately the game just got bombarded with negative reviews. I think they just got removed after a while. The company didn't give anything. The Game Awards stayed like that, and they stayed like that for all of the next upcoming years, basically. To make things worse, that same year in 2021, the Genshin official Twitter account released some sort of like follower challenge where they were encouraging fans to follow that account, and every follower milestone they hit, they gave something to the community, like some sort of funny thing or whatever. At 500k, they changed the name to Paimon, and then at 1 million, they will follow Elon Musk, and then at 3 million, they'll invite Elon Musk to stream Genshin Impact, and at 5 million, they'll just invite him to the headquarters of MiHoYo. And a lot of people were furious at that. I remember it was so funny because it's just so random. Like, how does that even make sense? Like, what's the point? I guess Elon Musk was much bigger and like respected back then, quote unquote, but it was still like so random. A lot of people did find it completely out of touch with the community, especially that it was right after that anniversary awards drama and stuff like that. So instead of them giving something meaningful, they were just planning to invite Elon Musk, who, by the way, didn't know anything about this. He even tweeted, "Can't wait to play Genshin Impact." But yeah, that was definitely pretty weird, and it did spark quite a bit of controversy at the time. A lot of people were talking about it, even outside the Genshin sphere. For 2022, at the beginning, there wasn't really much drama. There have been an extended Ayaka banner because the whole version got delayed because of the whole pandemic restrictions in China at the time, I think. And we had an Ayaka banner last like 200 days or something like that. A lot of people were calling it the Eternal Ayaka banner. A lot of people were definitely kind of pissed about that. But the main drama in 2022, and a more serious drama in some sort of way, was the Sumeru character's skin color drama. Sumeru was a region that's like supposed to be based around like a Middle Eastern / South Asian culture in general, and at that time we almost never had any darker skinned characters at all, almost, except like Xinyan, I think, which was already making a little bit of like talk in that period, because a lot of people were like, okay, we have like 30 characters right now and only one is not pale skin. That's a little, iffy. But most people were like, okay, you know what, it's just about the region. Inazumo's in Japan, so obviously we're not gonna have many characters that are gonna be darker skinned. It does make sense. When we get Sumeru, we're probably gonna have more characters that are darker skinned. But when time for Sumeru came out, the shock happened for people. The first leaked like 3 or 4 characters out of Sumeru were all just completely pale skinned, and a lot of people found that infuriating, because in an area of the world where most people there are just darker skinned, not all of them obviously, but most of them, you would expect more darker skinned characters, but that wasn't the case. Now, to be fair, that was probably also a very bad character chronological release, because we did get some darker skinned characters in the future, but the first ones were all pale skinned, which made a lot of people infuriated. There was a huge backlash in the game about the skin colors and that the whole game was being whitewashed and stuff like that. There's also fights within the community because some people were saying it's not that deep basically, and other people were saying it's just cultural interpretation and that they're exploiting the cultures to make money while they're not even representing them correctly. It did make a huge drama. Nothing has changed. The game just still released the character as they were planned. Pale ones were released as pale, but we did have some darker skinned characters later down the line. That was definitely a very huge controversy, and it did continue throughout the whole year pretty much. It didn't stop in like a period, because the more pale skinned character that got released, the angrier some people got, especially when key characters in the region like Naida, for example, and Alhaitham and whatever turned out to be pale skinned. A lot of people didn't like that, and it was definitely a huge controversy back then. For 2023, that was probably the most chill year in the game's history, honestly. In terms of like big drama, at least, we still got some things. For example, Dea got released then, and a lot of people weren't happy with how strong her kit was, because a lot were excited for Dea in general, and she was a fan favorite. And then her kit was very underwhelming. Fans tried to make the whole Zhongli thing come back again, but it didn't work that time. She wasn't buffed, and she was just added to the standard banner. Also, a lot of fans did tie that to more like whitewashing the game and racism, because they're saying one of the few dark-skinned characters we got, it's just heavily underpowered for a 5-star. Like, she literally had 4-star multipliers in her kit, so that did make some controversy at the time. There's also some drama about the Ternary's voice actor at the time. They had some harassment accusations come out, unfortunately, and a lot of people were angry at that. The game did come out and said they're replacing the voice actor, and they got kicked out. But honestly, in 2023, there was no major drama that made its way even outside the Genshin community or anything like that, like the previous years. 2024 though was hella different. The year started with some Genshin content creators at the time drama. It was Braxophone and Atsu. This is not directly a game drama, but at the time they were 2 of the biggest Genshin Impact content creators, at least in the Genshin world, and I feel like the whole Genshin community heard about that, so it's fair to mention it. But yeah, Braxophone just dropped a whole Google Docs at an Atsu explaining how he potentially sort of made him excluded and sort of stunted his career. Atsu replied after a while, there's a back and forth. A lot of other content creators got involved in this drama. It was pretty big. I mean, Braxophone's own tweet got like over 10 million impressions. That wasn't directly tied to the game, but it was a huge community drama at the start of the year. In 2024, it was also the year of where the whole SAG-AFTRA voice actor strike thing started. The whole voice actor strike for Genshin Impact was starting to form back then, and that's where the whole strike started. But at the time, that wasn't really a controversy per se, because a lot of fans were actually supporting the strike back then. It wasn't as unpopular as we're gonna see in a little bit in 2025, but that's when it started, and that was like a pretty big turning point. Also, I would say the biggest controversy for the game itself in 2024 was probably the same Natling colorism accusations for the company, because the whole Sumeru thing just restarted again. Natling was a region that was supposed to represent like more of Southern America, Polynesian culture, around that area of the world. It was obviously based around that culture, and again, a lot of people around that area are gonna have darker skin tones. But when the leaks came out for Natling, people saw that there are more pale-skinned character than darker-skinned character, and it sparks the whole debate again. It was basically the exact same thing as the Sumeru thing, with the exact same sides. Some people agreed, some people found it as just not that deep, but it definitely did spark a lot of controversy and talking about this topic. For 2025, we mainly only had the VA drama, which is a continuation of the strike that started in 2024. 2025 was when fans actually started noticing the strike effects, where a lot of story scenes were just non-voiced. A lot of characters didn't have voice actors to actually be voiced, and a lot of fans just hated that. Fans started getting angry at that, and they started blaming MiHoYo for not giving the actors their rights. And then with time, the whole narrative shifted, where fans discovered that the original reasons for the strike were not exactly as described by the voice actors. So fans started turning on voice actors, asking them to come back and saying that their strike is just not valid and that they lied to them. Some voice actors just attacked fans, and it made it much worse, and the drama got a whole lot bigger. At the end of the day, the whole cost of the Genshin Impact voice actors just got replaced. And yeah, I did make videos about this whole drama back then, so if you want to watch it in details and understand, you can check them out. But that's pretty much the resume of this drama. Besides that, I don't really think anything major happened in 2025, but we're almost in 2026. So what do you guys think is going to happen then? I mean, Snezhnaya is getting released. I can see some cultural representation problems appearing there, honestly. It's also going to be the last region in the game, so I can see some content, you know, discussions at least, or maybe even drama happening around what should the end game be for Genshin. Maybe some storyline discussions. I don't know what's coming in 2026. Tell me what you guys think in the comments. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.